first of all, Jamal, thank you very much for coming.
No problem. Thank you for having me on board.
Thank you. Yeah.
Greatly.
Can you tell us about your personal journey, who you are, and what led you to start the Young Khadims organisation?
So my name is Mohammed Jamal. Currently, I'm 20 years old, and Alhamdulillah, I've always been involved in community activism. I think it's been really important, to get involved in activities within our local community. There's charity projects, voluntary work, stuff like that. Growing up, it's always been a passion for me, and when I was 17 years old, I decided to start a youth and community group called the Young Khadims. Alhamdulillah, that's 3 years into it now. But yeah, alhamdulillah, that's the idea just came from I was traveling around to different masjids, as a youngster, and I noticed in each of the different mosques there were a group of youngsters, who still had a passion to be part of the mosque. And when we were younger, I remember a lot of our memories, were within the mosques, growing up, reading, and I think it came to a point where our parents would send us to mosque, and then afterwards, what I realized myself was that you don't see a lot of the people you grow up with, a mosque, especially youngsters. The only time you'd see them most likely would be during Jummah, or a janazah when someone passes away, and there's that community, the community gather, in situations like that. So that's when I thought, let's set something up. I spoke with a few brothers from different mosques. I thought, this is the idea I've got. What do you think? And I told them, this is the ideas we're going to have. How we're going to do our projects, our workshops, stuff like that. So that's how the idea came about. And I was just speaking to local brothers, from different mosques to come together. And I thought, let's start doing something to bring the youth, into the Islamic environment and give them that nurturing.
MashaAllah. And that was when you were 18?
17, so second year of college.
Amazing, absolutely amazing. If you can, let me know who you started the group off with, so who was involved in it at the start, and how many people there are now.
So when we started, I think there was only about 5 of us. It was a lot of the brothers from Jamia Hadriya, so it was myself, it was Hafiz Ruhan, mashallah, one of our senior volunteers, Furqan, Mohammed Jamal, brother Junaid, he lives up in Scotland now.
Right.
But so he's no longer with us. But he still, supports the work where he can. Okay. And how that came about, obviously, we were still young. I was 17 at the time. The other brothers, they were still in high school. But they had that passion, mashallah. So we thought, let's start something small. Often, when you start projects, you think, we'll do a big launch event, stuff like that. Yeah. We were kids at the time. We thought, money's tight, but we still want to do something. The shauq, the passion was still there. So we thought, how can we start off doing something? So what we decided was we'll do a small dua hair, just for barakat, so that we do dua for our first project. The first project that we thought of was a homeless feed. So we buy some food. Alhamdulillah, we got some donations, from the local community for our first project. We bought some food, we packed it. But just before we did that first project, we literally went to Chaiwala on Mixon Road. We went upstairs there. Is Mona Saqib, who's currently the Imam of Bilal Mosque. We asked him just to do a little dua. All of us sat there. We just look at the video, it's down on social media. Just for barakat purposes, for that project, so that alhamdulillah, Allah keeps our intentions sincere, grant us the ability to do more. So we just sat there, we did the dua, and then from there we literally went to Aspire, told them the idea. And then they let us use the venue, to pack the food. And then that same day, that's when we distribute the food. And that was our first project. We did advertise it. And alhamdulillah, there was only 5 of us that we were part of the team at the start. But back then, we had about, I think, good 10, 15 brothers that turned up. Then afterwards, we've done different projects. So I remember the project we did after that. It was a very popular one. It was a mosque sleepover in Bilal Mosque. We must have had good 25 brothers, that registered for that. And then up till now, alhamdulillah, I think this year it's been a very big year for us. Usually when it comes to our awards evening, that's my time, and I realize what impact we've had in the local community. So during the awards evening, I think we must have had around about 55 people turn up, and it wasn't just volunteers, but it was stakeholders as well. People who may have donated towards the project, or the organizations, representatives that we've collaborated with. So alhamdulillah, about 55 people we had at this year's awards evening, and we hope that next year's, obviously sometimes it's not always about quantity as well. Yeah. But, I think quality over quantity does matter as well. But I think the numbers, in that sense, the numbers speak for themselves. Yeah. Alhamdulillah, the work's having its impact. People are showing, the commitment towards the Young Khadims as well. So alhamdulillah.
Jamal, I started in 2006 with my social media platform and website, Madani Yaka. Yeah. I was in the same position as you.
100%.
And mashallah, look how big that's gone.
No, 100%.
And the people that I'm choosing now
Ji.
are community leaders from
100%.
Rochdale.
100%.
So mashallah, you have inspired. And in a matter of 5 years, you just mentioned one brother there.
Ji.
Well, nephew to me,
Ji, ji.
Hafiz Ruhan.
Subhanallah, that
Mashallah,
goes
he's
to
doing
show
hifz.
Mashallah,
Yeah,
exactly.
Maulana Saqib Saqibi.
100%. A brother,
You know, he's doing
we've seen
Dars-e
from-
Nizami.
Exactly. Massive. 6
Amazing,
years.
amazing. And you
100%.
guys are role models.
No, Alhamdulillah.
Mashallah, man. Really proud of you.
Jazakallah khair.
So, you know the name Young Khadims, how did that come about?
So I think it was just an idea. So obviously, I think I was speaking to Maulana Saqib about this. You know, I had this idea in mind. I'm just thinking, you know, to start something, you need a name. You know, obviously, there's a amount of branding
And
and stuff
identity,
like that.
isn't it?
Identity is like people they can associate with Khadims, etc. So I was just thinking about, you know, our pious predecessors who, you know, we follow our Aqeedah and stuff.
Yeah.
One big person that we follow is, you know, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, Ghosi Azam, you know, massive personality, Sultan al-Awliya, Pir, exactly, that's the terminology we use. And, you know, one of their biggest sayings is that, you know, if I've looked into all the works, you know, spiritual works, you know, that's rewarding, I've not seen something bigger than, you know, feeding people, doing people's khidmat.
Yeah.
And then I think that quote just inspired me. I just thought there's so much potential, you know, in doing khidmat. But not restricting it, not just to food, but, you know, I wanted to have that youth base. I wanted to be relevant to the youth as well. So that's why it's basically Khadims as well, but young Khadims. So, you know, it's got that, it's an attribute to the youth as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, the youngsters come on board as well.
It's like now, if I see the colour yellow and black, I'm thinking of you.
First thing that comes to mind is the young Khadims.
Mashallah, You've mentioned this to me. I know you've not mentioned it in regards to who started it, but you said you want to talk about this brother. Who is brother Muhammad Umar Farooq Qadri?
So our late brother, our late brother Umar Farooq Qadri, he left this temporary world in May last year. So we're approaching 1 year since he passed away. He wasn't just one of our volunteers, but you know, he was a very close friend of mine as well. You know, our first memories were during mosque days. You know, we were young. We both used to study in, you know, Fazan Medina.
Yeah.
I started in 2013. I must have been around 7 years old at that time. He would have been even younger because he was about 2 years younger than me. So that's where we first met. You know, we had our memories. You know, in mosque and stuff, studying together. Then on the weekends, we used to go to each other's houses. You know, for Naat practices. And that we both had that passion, you know, to recite Naats. So we used to go to each other's houses, you know, practice Naats and stuff. As well as that, we used to travel around as well. You know, I know his father used to take us to places, you know, like Blackburn, Oldham, Manchester, Bradford, you know, where there was gatherings taking place, where scholars and stuff used to come. Even at one point, we got called to, you know, on my channel, I don't know if you remember that TV channel. We got called to a Naat show on there. It's run by Brother Abdullah, the Nasheed artist. And, you know, even that was it was a very proud moment for us. You know, we were just kids, 10, 11 years old. You know, to be called on TV at that age, you know, it was a very big thing for us. And these type of things you don't forget. So, alhamdulillah, that's the memories we had of Umar, you know, growing up. And then in 2017, that same year, I left mosque. So, I've only been in high school at that age. My brother passed away in 2017, July time. And I was only in year 7 at the time, so I was still young. Umar, he would have been even younger. He would have been in primary school. You know, you've still got the videos and stuff, you know, from the janazah and the burial. And, you know, Umar's there. I'm stood with him, you know, next to him, you know, throughout the janazah, throughout the burial. And I remember, you know, even going to the burial of my brother, it was Umar who I went with, you know, to the burial. Yes, but you know, these type of things, you know, you don't forget. And then, you know, I just remember obviously he was there for me, you know, when I was going through difficulty. Fast forward to 2017, I left mosque at that age, you know, reading. So I think sometimes we get to an age where, you know, alhamdulillah, we're satisfied with the amount we've read and stuff. So I finished at that age. Remember, Umar, he still stayed behind, you know, he was still reading in Fazan Medina, carried on. And it was 2018 where our next encounter was, you know, within our childhood. And there's a small town in Lancashire, it's called Bryfield, between Burnley and Nelson. So there was a Naat group that was launched there, it's called Khushbu Hassan. They launched about 7 years ago. MashaAllah, you know, Umar's father, Uncle Irfan, you know, Allah bless him, he was very committed to the deen, and he used to bring Umar every single week to that Naat class, right from the start, from about 2018 onwards. You know, if you go on Google, YouTube, if you search for Khushbu Hassan, you know, if you look at the earliest videos, you know, MashaAllah, our late brother Umar, he's on there, you know, leading the classes, you know, leading the Naat classes for the youngsters, MashaAllah. And, you know, even that, it goes to show, you know, the commitment that they had towards the deen, you know, traveling around, even on a weekly basis, you know. I know a lot of people can't do that nowadays. Alhamdulillah, I used to see Umar there, on a weekly basis. So, that was really heartwarming to see, at that point in life. And then, alhamdulillah, I think COVID hit, and obviously a few years went past. And, as life goes on, sometimes you do lose contact with people. It's part and parcel of life, isn't it? With Umar, I did used to see him here and there, on occasions, like when we have mosque events sometimes, like Shab-e Baraat, stuff like that. And that's one of the times I remember seeing him, after COVID and stuff. And then December 2022, we launched the Young Khadims. So alhamdulillah, we had a group of volunteers on there. Then Umar was one of those volunteers who he approached me afterwards. He goes, look, Jamal, I've seen the work that you're doing. I want to get involved. And it was really heartwarming. When he approached me, I was like, you know what, like it's people like you. I wanted to get on board. People I've grew up with and I've seen potential in. And his work ethic, mashallah, it was unmatched. When you talk about khidmat, he's one of the first people that comes to mind. How active he was, as a young person. Alhamdulillah, it was really heartwarming to see. If you look at our first annual awards evening, his pictures there, when he got the award and stuff, for his work ethic, despite him joining late, he just showed, how passionate he was. I'm sure every member of, the Khadim's team could vouch for his character, and, Allah Ta'ala bless him. And, another moment, I'll always cherish as well is that I won an Umrah ticket in the Manchester Central Mosque. It was September 2023, I won it. We took a coach from Rochdale at that time, when we went. And there was only a few brothers, but I remember Umar was there, he witnessed it when it happened, when I won the ticket. So it was nice to share that moment with him, he was present when it happened. Because obviously it was a big thing for me as well. And thereafter, I went to Umrah, the year after. And our last ever encounter was in the masjid, just after I came back from Umrah. So I went to read namaz. So I was literally just leaving the masjid. He's walked into the same masjid. And he was just giving me a barak, my Umrah, I just returned. And that was the last ever encounter that we had. And you know what? It's a bittersweet moment because, I'm just grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, despite the tragedy that obviously surrounding him passing away and stuff, our last encounter was in, Allah's house, of all places. And I'm trying to think, what more blessing could we ask for?
That memory that you've got.
100%, it's going to stay there forever, isn't it? Alhamdulillah. And then a few weeks later, that's, when we heard the news of Umar's passing away. I remember, a lot of people do ask me, to confirm sometimes, because I'm one of the admins as well, the Janaza group. So some people do ask me to confirm, deaths and sometimes. And I'm used to that as well. But I think when it came to Umar, when I got the text initially, when someone asked me, has Umar passed away? I think that's the first time, I felt the feeling of, no, this can't be true.
Hits you.
It hits you hard. I don't think feelings do justice, to how it felt. But honestly, I'll still remember that day, it was in the middle of the day, we had plans, I was like thinking, I'm going to do this afternoon, and then just to get this message. That person, they were still unsure, so they were verifying through me. But I think we got to a point where, we both realised, the news is true and he's passed away. And then straight after that, I think that's when I got phone calls, from the other brothers, the big group around, they were just saying, oh, the news. And then I think obviously one thing that I realised there was that, when it comes to death is not the end. When you hear the news of someone's passing, there's still so much you can do. That's getting involved in their final rites, helping with their ghusl, their janaza arrangements. You can still do that. And even, after they've been buried, after the janaza and stuff, there's so much more you can still do. And, one thing that stood out to me is the amount of Isali Sawab, that's been done for our late brother Umar Farooq. There was, I'll give you a few examples. There was, two Hatam Sharifs, organised by the family. The friends decided to organise one, which was captured with an Yaka. That's a very emotional one.
Thank you for inviting me all the time. Being part of it.
No, alhamdulillah, you've seen us on that journey. You've covered moments of us, and happiness and sadness. But no, alhamdulillah, that was it gives us memories, to look back on, the Hatam that was recorded in the Chishtiya Masjid. And even after that, there was so much that was done. His friends, I know a lot of them, did charitable projects. Whether it was giving food packs abroad, making water wells. There were other brothers. There was another video that was released, and in the end, they had a tribute, to our late brother Umar Farooq Qadri. Even when he passed away, I remember a lot of the Nathans, from across the country, they posted on their social medias, a tribute to Umar as well. After they received the news. And it just reminded me that there's so much that we can do, in a person's memory, and just it's so beautiful, our belief in that sense. I think from the Young Khadim's perspective, there was three things that stood out. There's a lot that was done, but there's three things that stood out to me. number one was the khatam that we organised, as friends to get that sukoon, to get that tranquility that we wanted, following the tragedy. Second thing was the weekend retreat we helped organise in Fasan Medina. That was the local masjid we attended. It was a really good event, to be involved with. To have his friends on board as well, spend the night in the masjid in good company. It's all the reward, everything that's recited, it's all going to be,
that's the link now between
100%.
you and Umar, isn't it?
Exactly, alhamdulillah, that link, we make dua that, it still stands. And the third thing was, I remember one of the other masjids, they approached us and they said, look, we want to do something, for the brothers that have passed away. Because obviously Umar passed away and there was a few other brothers, young that passed away. And I think it did hit the community hard, in times of tragedy. And I was very grateful when that masjid came on board, and we had a really good event with Imam Asim. He came down from Bradford. My favourite scholar till this day.
He's inspired loads of people.
Especially the youngsters as well. He delivered such an important message, to the youth, and it was a very deep event. Alhamdulillah, we collaborated with different organisations on that event. Like recovery organisations, and we had Muslim funeral services involved. They had a coffin and stuff, to make it more realistic. Shows how close death is. And I remember a lot of people saying to me, after Umar passed away, they'd be like, he'd be so proud of you. For the amount you've done it in his Salih Sawab. And alhamdulillah, I'm just grateful that we had the opportunity, to do what we can do. It was a lesson at the end of the day, for each and any one of us. We didn't expect anyone to pass away, within the team, but at the same time, we've gone to show what we do, in times of difficulty, how, not just for our own sake, but, for their own Salih Sawab as well, because they're getting the benefit of it as well. So, even every project we do now, any big scholar that comes, we tell him to make dua at the end, for our for the Ummah, because, everything we want to do now is in his memory.
Just to add to that, like I said, when I spoke to you, you said, I showed you the questions and you said you want one question about Muhammad Umar Qadri. And then, like you said, you've organised something, like in terms of Salih Sawab for him. And then you've done it again, like with the Khatam Sharif. Where I came, and let me tell you a bit of background to that. Me and Irfan, his dad, we grew up together. He used to have a shop in our area. I can't remember Irfan's big brother's name, but he used to have a channel called Islam for You.
That's still on YouTube, I've seen that,
Yes. He had a channel in the mid 2015, that kind of time. But I knew his family. I did not know that his son has passed away. When you invited me,
until we did the 40th Khatam.
And when I went there, I still didn't know until after someone mentioned it. That, look how Allah Ta'ala brings you together.
People together, we don't realise, it's like the people that we invite to gatherings, everyone plays a big part. There's always that connection as well. We don't know until we're actually there.
Bilkul.
But I think this was a conversation we had with the brothers as well, between our team. Saying that, when it comes to organising events and stuff, like every single person involved in that event, they're getting a reward somehow, even if they're not physically there. Say the person that's delivering the food, the person that's cooking the food, the person that's doing the live stream, the person that's sharing it, donating towards it. Everyone's a part of that event. And there's a hadith that says that the angels look for these type of gatherings, and it just goes to show how beautiful. Imagine the angels witnessing these type of events. Because honestly, it's just beautiful.
MashaAllah, man. Salih Sawab for that. So, what problem were you trying to solve when you launched this initiative?
So I think one of the biggest gaps I seen, and like a challenge that I realised there was within the community, was that there wasn't enough going on, for young boys in particularly, and bringing them close to the deen. I feel like alhamdulillah, a lot of our mosques they do have an individual basis of trying to bring youngsters into their own mosques and stuff. But what I seen myself was that there wasn't anything going on, like where you'd promote, today we're at this masjid, let's go to that one. And that's where I thought I'll come in. I was like, alhamdulillah, I've travelled around to different mosques. I'm not shy in going out my comfort zone. And I was like, I'm like, alhamdulillah, I'm in a good place, with the representatives of the mosque and stuff. So I thought, if I can speak to them, say, today we're going to do an event in this mosque, tomorrow I'll be okay to host something here. And alhamdulillah, and they're on board with it. And the beautiful thing was, like, a lot of the brothers that have attended our events, they were like, we didn't know this masjid exists. We've heard of it, potentially, maybe on social media or whatnot. But, like, we've attended it, we've seen it, mashallah, and, like, who knew Rochdale, had this sort of stuff. And, if it wasn't for the opportunity that we were given, to organise events, and alhamdulillah, the masjids, some of them, You know, they've been
Bilkul.
really positive towards
Yeah.
it. You know, sometimes they contribute towards it, and then, you know, it makes things easier towards us, you know, when we organize our projects. And it makes things go easier, you know, for the events, for the projects, for the workshops as well.
Yeah.
You know, there's been times where we've hosted workshops in mosques as well, and that's something different as well. That's another thing, you know, why I started doing Khadims was like, you know, we used to go for like events and programs and stuff, but it'd be the same old, one English speech, potentially naats in other languages and stuff. But like the modern day issues, you know, mental health, drugs, you know, this sort of stuff that wasn't being addressed.
Yeah.
And I just thought there's so much potential, you know, for the masjids, you know, to contribute towards the, you know, these type of issues. And I feel like our masjids as well, you know, there shouldn't just be a place, you know, for the pious to become more pious. There should be a place, you know, for everyone to
Like
come.
a community youth hub.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
And a hub, you know, for the community. That's what it should be. And we should discuss problems, and, you know, people should be comfortable in attending the masjids. You know, alhamdulillah, our elders have done such an amazing job, you know, establishing, building these masjids. Now it's our responsibility, you know, to make it develop going forward. So in order to do that, we need to have like a good congregation, you know, and that's going to be the youngsters' responsibility, you know, to take that forward. So I thought we'll be that middle person, you know, who comes in and, you know, tries to build bridges, you know, between the communities and try to make the mosques more welcoming.
Yeah.
Because alhamdulillah,
For the youth
for the youth,
especially,
exactly,
because
100%.
they're kind of diverted.
Yeah, 100%.
We need to bring
There's
them.
not a lot, you know, going on for them.
Yeah.
So if we turn around and say, look, we've got a sleepover going on, or we've got this English speaking scholar coming down all the way from Birmingham, Bradford, wherever, you know, at the end of the day, like, they can't make an excuse saying, you know, nothing's being organised for us. You know, we're trying. I know we'll get the reward for what we've done, but, you know, if they choose to benefit, you know, alhamdulillah, ultimately, they're getting the reward, we're getting the reward. It's a win-win.
When you're doing it in a mosque,
Yeah.
every breath you take, you're getting
It's
swabbed.
getting swabbed for it, exactly.
Yeah.
I don't think we realise that, you know, the
Yeah.
importance of it as well, you know, of just being in the masjid as well. So, alhamdulillah, you know, there's so much more that goes on, and, you know, even the khidmat and stuff that we do, I've been telling this to the team as well, that, you know, when you achieve something in life sometimes, you know, whether it's like a big academic achievement, or, you know, something else, you know, like a wali achievement, you pass your driving course, you know, something like that. Sometimes I say to them, or I need to remind them that, look, this could be because of the work that we're doing. Do you get what I mean? This could be someone's dua that's being answered. You know, say if the elder sees, oh, look at these boys that are in the masjid, the elders making dua for us.
Mashallah.
We don't know the impact of that dua.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, it's beautiful.
And you and your team, mashallah, so there's a funeral. What you do is you do the kind of traffic management as well.
Yeah,
So
100%. We've
it's
been
all
involved in
voluntary.
that as well, alhamdulillah. And, you know, it's these type of things we expect as well. Like, I know, you know, obviously, especially for our community as well, you know, during Muharram and Milad.
Yes,
I'm always expecting one phone call from, you know, Fazan Medina. They say to us, you know, look, we've got the Muharram gathering today. You can help us with the car parking. Honestly, it makes me very happy as well. Do you know what I mean? They're thinking about us. They know, look, there's youngsters that can call, and you know, the help fee sabilillah. You know, there's no financial gain for it. Or, you know, sometimes we're just doing it, you know, for the reward at the end of the day. And alhamdulillah, it makes me happy. You know, when it comes to all the summer, we're expecting that phone call. I was like, you know, it's a blessing in disguise, alhamdulillah.
And you just mentioned me and Afzal. We did a bit of a video in our own language for Rochdale to Rajdhani Connected. But it wasn't done in English, and you've been touching on this from the start of the interview. How big a role Dawat-e-Islami, Fizan Medina have played in your development, in Maulana Saqib Saqibi's development,
100%.
and the other volunteers.
Exactly, because I think
it's amazing.
100%. And
it's free.
It's free as well. That's something we don't think about as well. I think we need to, one thing we definitely need to do more of is, you know, appreciate people that are involved with us. I feel like, you know, the person that I am now is because of, you know, my teachers. You know, when I was growing up, alhamdulillah, I think one of the biggest like role models that has played part in developing me is, you know, my maths teacher. When I was growing up in Fazan Medina, it's Qari Ubaid, mashallah. You know, I still see him till this day, mashallah. I think he's the head of the Hifz now, you know, in Fazan Medina. Qari Ubaid, he's a Hafiz Masood Budin-lo.
Alright, okay.
Mashallah, you know, I still see him in mosque nowadays, and he puts a smile on my face, you know.
They always do. They're always smiling. You know, them
100%.
brothers there. They're always smiling and always welcoming, no matter what.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
And, you know, like you said, Mullah Saqib as well, you know, mashallah, he's done a lot with them. You know, he's studied with them for 6 years. Hafiz Ruwan, mashallah.
I think he's a bridge from the elder generation who I've been involved with. So I'm talking about brother Irfan Atari, Qari Masoom Haider. So these are the brothers that we used to bring here to the radio and we used to,
exactly.
2006, 2007 on brother Afzal Naqshbandi's show. And then Maulana Saqib Saqbi with you guys is mashallah.
He's the bridge, connecting,
yes,
mashallah. Because obviously, I think we need to remember as well, we're from different generations. Do you know what I mean? Like, we've got our own way of doing things, the elders will have their own way of doing things. But, to have a bridge like that and a connection, it's a blessing in disguise, alhamdulillah. Even, mashallah, Hafiz Ruhan, he said, we'll touch upon this in a bit, we talk about, our proudest achievements with the Khadims and stuff. But, now, currently, he's studying Dars Nizami with Fazan Medina. He's in his second year doing part-time.
Mashallah.
So it goes to show, alhamdulillah.
It's motivating, isn't it? So it's like Maulana Saqib Saqbi Sahab, they've got educated themselves on Dars Nizami, but they've not kept it to themselves.
No, it's
they've guided.
They've transferred it, and mashallah, they've got many students who are on board with them, and it's very heartwarming to see. You'll attend Bilal Mosque on a Sunday night, and you'll see Maulana Sahab turn up with his students. Sometimes it's not Maulana Saqib doing the speeches; he'll get the students to do it. And I'm just thinking,
mashallah, I have to mention this, Jamal. I know it's about young Khadims.
But
my own nephew, my sister's son, Hafiz Mohammed Usman. He's done hifz there as well.
100%.
So it's not just about being a Atari or being linked to, like Dawat Islami. You could be from anywhere.
Anywhere, exactly. And they're welcoming to everyone.
I've asked one of the brothers for an interview.
Is it?
I have. I'm sure he won't mind me saying it's brother Irfan Atari. He's a bit tied up. But he said in a couple of weeks he's going to do it, and it's really important we do, because I know they've got a school opening.
They have, and for the Rochdale community, that's a massive thing as well.
Free again.
100%. Alhamdulillah. Who does that nowadays? See, these are the type of things that we're not gonna we don't think about yet, but in a few years' time, it'll be an important decision for us. When it comes to time when we have kids, we're going to start thinking, where should we send them? And plus, it's a scary place, the dunya is turning into. We need to consider options, the Dawat Islami are offering this education. It's there, why not?
What were the biggest challenges in the early days of building the young Khadims?
I think the biggest challenges, two that I can definitely think of off the top of my head would be consistency, commitment and consistency. And second one being mosque committees. So first one was, I think with the youngsters, when you're starting off something, you need to show to people that you're serious about it. You know what I mean? Sometimes people, they'll have a bright idea, they'll start something, but then they're not with you, they're not going to carry on, for years to come. Or it'll just be an idea.
It dries off.
It dries off 100%. The passion dies down and stuff. So I think that's one thing I definitely struggled with at the start. There was some good brothers that were there saying we'll support you. Unfortunately, a few weeks down the line, I was left on my own, and then it was me guiding, the other youngsters. But alhamdulillah, the passion didn't really die down for me. Alhamdulillah, I kept it going, and alhamdulillah, I was still going 3 years strong. So alhamdulillah, it was a problem back then, but you learn from experience. So alhamdulillah, I'm glad I went through that, because I just came out stronger from that.
It's a learning point.
It's a learning point, 100%. Second thing, I think mosque committees, that's definitely something we've struggled with. Because our ideas sometimes they're quite innovation. If we present an idea to a mosque committee saying this is our idea, it'll be something that's never been done before. In the mosque, for example, say if I say to this mosque, I want to do a fun day. Obviously there's rules and implications. But we'll do it in a way where there's no backlash. There's nothing nothing like that. But say if you present an idea to them, they'll be like, the youngsters are going to make a mess. Or, how do you know it's going to go well? There's so much questions that are asked. And I think with the mosque committees, we have to show them that, look, we're capable of doing X, Y, Z, this project, that project. I think that's where slowly, the problem's still there. But I think we're dealing with it better now. It's not a problem that's going to go away overnight. It'll take time. But
you, mashallah, develop yourself, Jamal. So I've seen you in Bilal Mosque, in Al-Qaba, I've seen you in Gosia Mosque, I've seen you in Hydriya Mosque. Mashallah, what you've started there is breaking that barrier.
100%. There's still a lot of work to be done. But alhamdulillah, it goes to show, slowly, our faces are getting shown, the awam is seeing, the people are seeing, look, these youngsters, they're having a good impact, and the feedback is always very heartwarming as well. The guests and stuff that we call. When we do events and stuff, we do it very unique. We want to break that barrier of, where people are just sitting in the mosque for hours listening to naats and stuff like that. Our focus be more on look, there's so many English speaking scholars. I'm just thinking, why is no one called to Rochdale? You know what I mean? And when the opportunity comes, I was like, the people will be like, this scholar, he spoke beautifully. We learned a lot. And even the scholars that I may have heard from social media, not big scholars. And afterwards, I'm just like, I may have heard it from him in 1 year. The next year, I'm in contact with them, talking about our projects and events, and it just goes to show that, alhamdulillah, the opportunity is there, to call into Rochdale, to get the people to benefit from them, and then there's so much reward in that as well.
Yeah.
And so I think we're changing the barrier as well, for how
That's massive, yeah.
how events are placed in mosques as well,
If you look at it, I mean, one of the main reasons I've started this One World, Many Voices is that Rochdale has had media coverage for all the wrong reasons.
For the wrong reasons, 100%. Absolutely.
And now what you've done is you've started something where you say, let's just go off Imam Muhammad Asim Hussain.
Yeah, as an example.
When they come to Rochdale, young Khadims.
People,
you've put us on the map, haven't you?
100%. And it's about giving that limelight to Rochdale as well, If the word young Khadims gets mentioned, the town, people automatically think Rochdale. And, it goes to show, I've been in places, Bradford, Oldham, people have been like, oh yeah, young Khadims is based there, isn't there?
Yeah.
And then it goes to show, the work's...
Proud, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's a very proud moment, and the work's paying off as well, that limelight.
So it's not just about religion, it's about Rochdale. You're a Rochdalian.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
And you're promoting it.
People can say to me, you need to do this in our town.
Yeah.
Like, remember, there was a drugs workshop that we did, and the way we tried doing that, it was with a different organisation, was that we tried rotating in 3-4 different masjids. When we were doing, when they've got the madrasa, we basically hosted like an assembly, and for the kids, we were showing them the dangers of, drugs and substance and stuff like that. So we rotated in 3 different mosques. And then I remember when I posted that, I got a message afterwards. Someone said to me, "Can you do this to Huddersfield, please?" I just think, I wish, I wish we...
Hopefully in middle.
100%, exactly. Allah knows best, if you can ever, expand it to such an extent where, we can operate in other towns. But I think home is always home, and there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in Rochdale. The focus is still here, for the time being.
Yeah, mashallah. Can you share some of your key projects you've run so far? Now, I know you've mentioned drug and alcohol, which is massive. 100%.
Yeah. So I think I'll start with the drug and alcohol awareness. So we've done a few projects with, when it comes to like drugs and alcohol service, obviously we're not like a recovery organisation and stuff, but we are a youth organisation, so we'll collaborate with other organisations. So there's one called Salik Project. That's like a newly found organisation. With them, they focus on like drug and alcohol awareness in the Asian community. Before they launched, they're very recent. It's just about been a year, since they've launched. We had to work with other alcohol and drug services, like High Level and these organisations based in and around Rochdale. So
that's massive. You're working in partnership with all the other organisations.
All these big organisations, alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
And with that, so we did like collaboration events where we talked about the dangers of drugs and alcohol to young students of mosques. And I think for the mosque kids, it was a very big thing for them as well. Like, we had a volunteer from the recovery organisation who talked about their experience. Obviously for the youngsters, they'll feel it as well. They'll be like, today in mosque we weren't just learning Al-Qaeda and stuff. We had an assembly, these guys came in, they talked about the experiences and the negative effects of drugs and alcohol. And there's a taboo with it as well, with drugs and alcohol. So we want to try and break that taboo as well, within our communities. These type of things, they need to be talked about. And alhamdulillah, even like that as well, we organised like a focus group with the Salik Project. We held that in the South Street Islamic Centre. Remember, even with that, I was like, not everyone's going to come to the mosque when it comes to drugs and alcohol service. So let's do it in a neutral location. We did it at the centre on South Street. There was a good turnout, and it was we didn't have anything recorded. Just like with brothers, we had a few photos and stuff taken, just for our social media. But alhamdulillah, the conversations we had there, about our own insight,
confidential as well.
It's confidential, exactly. No one's gonna go out there telling people, what they heard from XYZ. So I think that was definitely a big project.
So you're working in partnership with other organisations that wouldn't normally go to a mosque.
Yeah,
you're bringing them in.
Bringing them to the mosque. How they mentioned.
What's something people don't see behind the scenes of running your organisation?
So that's a good question. Thank you for asking it. But there's a lot that goes into the projects and stuff that we do. We don't obviously document everything on social media, so not everything's there to be seen. But like, I'll give you an example. I'll use our Sakina circles as an example. That's an initiative we launched around summertime last year. To have something for young brothers and mental health. To have somewhere we can sit down, have honest and open conversations. About things that are affecting them. With that, we launched it. But till this day, obviously a few months down the line, we're still trialing it to see which way is going to work best. How we're going to have the most impact. And when we have these sessions, we don't put it on our social media. you know, the photos and stuff. Like we'll just put a poster up saying this is our project today. You know, if you're free,
That's
pop down.
understandable. I mean, people are discussing real life issues.
Confidentiality, you know, this sort of stuff's very important.
Yeah.
So we'll have the impact of that. But you know, till this day, even though we launched it months ago, we're still checking, you know, what's the best way to go about it. We're still planning, you know, having discussions with other people, you know, to increase the outreach of this as well. But another thing I will mention is what goes into events, you know, the amount of time you spend, money as well, you know, that can be a big thing.
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example from an event that we did recently. I don't want to get too much into it, but you know, people will have no idea about this until I mention it, you know, on camera now.
Yeah.
Well, recently we hosted 2 guests. One came from London, you know, near Slough, and one came from Birmingham. So when this happened, this mosque where we hosted the event, they had 2 puris on the same day. This is something we didn't expect. And obviously, it's out of our control. So when it happened, we were thinking, what should we do? So we tried to use another room in the mosque. See, that wasn't possible initially. And then after that, we tried to use another venue, you know, just down the road from the same mosque. When that happened, that same mosque, like they got some renovation stuff going on at the minute. The electricity was turned off and it was pre-planned. So, and the guests were already set off. So I'm just thinking, like, wow, what do I do in this situation? And I think after, like, you know, talking with the committee and stuff, after speaking to them, like, finally we met in the middle. And obviously, despite the puri and stuff going on, they just like, they gave us a room at the side. It wasn't the biggest room, but you know, alhamdulillah, whatever was going to be, you know, alhamdulillah, I'm just glad that the event went through. You know, despite all the setbacks, you know, I know, like, a lot of people in that situation, they'd probably just give up. They'd be like, you know, too much happened already, you know, laying there. But I just thought, you know what, like, you know, I had the motivation to do it. I thought, you know what, I'm not leaving until, you know, this event's finished. So alhamdulillah.
MashaAllah. So, you know, you've touched on working in partnership, delivering different projects. And of course, that makes a massive difference on your community groups that are attending your projects.
100%.
The one that I've been kind of contacted about a lot is, so we have a lot of organisations for women that support them for domestic violence and, you know, like signpost them.
100%.
We struggle a lot with the
men. I think there's definitely demand for that as well. But, you know, like you said, it's a taboo issue, you know, that people don't talk about. I think that's definitely something our community needs to work on, and it's something we can get involved with as well. You know, when it comes to, you know, post-marriage issues, you know, stuff like that for men. It needs to be talked about more often, and then perhaps this is something, you know, we can touch base with, you know, with other organisations, organise seminars. You know, if people don't want to talk about it, there's options to do it in the mosques. You know, if people want to do it, we request the imams to a Jummah khutbah or something. Even as well as that, you know, we can organise seminars and stuff. You know, we've got a deep community centre, we've got different places where we can, you know, organise stuff like that, and, you know, break the stigma, break the taboo, talk about what's really happening.
And when they've got signposts, it's not that we're going to do something. They'll know who to contact.
Who to contact, exactly, because like people will be aware, you know, they're not you know, they're not a support service in that extent, but they know who will be. Do you get what I mean? So even just signposting them and say, look, this is where you can turn to if you need support in this sense. I think definitely that's something.
And we could invite speakers in as well, you know, like from these groups.
From these groups, exactly. Have a little seminar and stuff, you know. I think that will definitely go down very well. And there's need for it, like you said.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for the idea.
So, how can someone get involved with your work today?
Okay, so it's a good you asked that, actually, because we're hosting a open day next week, next Saturday, 4th of April. And this is going to be in the Aspire Youth Zone next week. So this is just for new volunteers, you know, people who don't want to get involved. I know around this time, especially, like, we're in contact, you know, the actual sixth form. This time they usually do like a social development program. So the college, they assign people to, you know, like care homes, different places, you know, learn some skills, do some voluntary work. We thought, you know what, let's get on board as well. You know, if people want to get involved in our work, we'll speak to the college, and the college have been on board. And they said, if any of our volunteers want to go towards, you know, help out at your events, you know, as long as you're keeping an eye on them, monitoring their attendance, you know, we're more than happy. So the reason we did it, we thought, you know, we'll do it around April holidays time. People have got enough time to get on board.
It's growing now, isn't it? So 100%. You need,
So I think we need to have, like, you know, open days like this. And plus, we've kept it away from the mosque. We're not hosting it in a mosque or anything. We're doing it. We're gonna have like a presentation. We're gonna have like a Kahoot game. You know, for people to icebreakers and stuff. You know, people get to know each other. And then afterwards, there's like game facilities. You know, the youth zone that we use. They've got like pool tables, snooker, PlayStation, this sort of stuff. It makes the environment more better. And the environment, it has a massive impact as well. So I thought that's why I would host it there at the Aspire Youth Zone. So if anyone is watching and wants to get involved, then do let us know. On our social media. Saturday, inshallah, 4th of April, the Aspire Youth Zone on Yorkshire Street. So just next to Sahara Grill. If you want to confirm your attendance, then you can send an email to theyoungkhadims@gmail.com, or you could just send us a text on any of our social media pages. Then that way we just know how many people you're expecting and we can cater for them.
What social media platforms are you on?
So we're on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, the main three. So we just set up an email as well. If people want to contact us, email. We've got like a forum as well, just to post our updates. And that's probably the most popular. People know what's happening. YouTube is pending at the minute. I think we just saw somewhere we can have all our content at the minute. But we've got a brother, mashallah, Allah bless him. He's not even from Rochdale. But he's approached me and goes, look, Jamal, like I've seen your content and stuff. If you need a hand, putting videos and stuff, I'm there. Allah bless this brother as well.
Jamal, I know as an organisation you're coping so far, but it's getting bigger and bigger.
The demands there,
yes, and it's costing as well. So if someone wants to support you financially, is there a way they can do this?
So alhamdulillah, we're registered, like legally we're a constituted group. So we've got a bank account, trustees and all that sort of stuff. So alhamdulillah, we've got a bank account. If anyone wants to donate, then they can contact me myself, or they can just contact us on any of the social media pages. Obviously, because we're not a registered charity, we don't post our bank details, for donations and stuff. There's a lot of other causes people can donate towards. But a helping hand always goes a long way. So if people do want to donate, then they can contact us, on our social media platforms. We're happy to accept donations for any events and stuff. Even sometimes at events, after events, people they'll give you some money afterwards. They will just put this towards your next event, and that goes a long way.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Jamal.
Jazakallah for having me on board.
Thank you.